Hi guys, welcome to episode 2 of the Flame and Fiber podcast. My name is Barbara. I'm your host, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Deevaas, Deevaas. And I'd like to say welcome. And if you saw my first podcast and came back, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you're just finding me, hello. I hope you enjoy the time you spent here, and I'm so glad to have you. I was so thrilled to get some subscribers. So after my first episode, it was so exciting. My poor husband, I have 13 subscribers. I was so excited. Anyway, so if you want to know about the next episode and you want to make my day, hit subscribe. This is a knitting podcast, some spinning, although no spinning today. And I also do lamp working, which is the art of melting glass on a torch and turning it into things. I personally make beads. Some people make pipes, which are illegal to sell, I think, because they're considered drug paraphernalia, but some of them are wonderful sculptures. Marbles, people make goblets, things like that. But I make beads. And I thank you so much to the Crafty Toads for their shout out, Helen and Mary Beth. And Mary Beth had said that she wanted to see a little more of the lamp working. So here's some beads I made. These are hollow beads. But I brought along some of my favorite beads to show off. And I think I have the light set so you'll be able to see the beads. This is got a lot going on. A lot of these beads are encased in clear glass, and so you can see deep into the beads. So this has lots and lots of colors. Kind of a fun bead. This one has fewer colors, but this is an effect you get from adding silver foil, real silver, to the bead. I don't know if I can hold it. I can't seem to hold it still. So you can see it. And this one's my favorite. I had a few others that I really liked. This has clear green, you can see all the way through it, and then this luminescence. I just really love this one. I think I'm going to make this into a orifice hook or something so that I use it all the time, although it would make a beautiful necklace. But I had other beads that I loved, and I sold them, and I'm not sure the $25 that I got for them were, ended up being worth it, although that is a skein of yarn. So anyway, so that's for Mary Beth a little bit. Going to have my husband in the upcoming month or so tape me while I am working in my Lampwork studio so you can actually see the process of making beads. It's really quite fascinating. I really enjoy it. I'm going to turn these lights off now. We don't need them. I ended up burning out on the bead making because I started selling my beads on some internet auction sites, which was really nice to be able to do that. And I know that other makers out there know the feeling that, you've made something that you really are proud of and someone wants to pay you for it because they want to own it. It's really very gratifying. But the auction sites that, end up being a lot of work. Every day you have to be like it took me hours every day to sell these beads. And my, husband laughed at me because I was working just as hard as I was before I retired, making, a tiny fraction of the money. But it is very satisfying to sell your creations and other makers, because I was selling beads, so it's a component, so jewelry makers were buying my beads. And, so it was very fun to see the jewelry that these very talented jewelry makers made with my beads. So that's fun. So I'm going to get back to making beads. And so there will be a lamp working component to this podcast, but mainly it's about yarn and knitting and fibery, crafty things. I'd like to start by talking again about this yarn. I did such a terrible job of pronouncing this last time that it was kind of embarrassing. And thank you, Kay. My friend Kay grew up in Western Pennsylvania and tells me this is pronounced Youghiogheny. So this is Youghiogheny yarns. This yarn was a special fundraiser yarn for Connellsville, Pennsylvania. They had a flash flood, and part of the proceeds was going to flood relief. Youghiogheny. Anyway, gorgeous yarn. I've seen she has had an update since then. I follow her on Instagram. This was the only thing on her site when I bought it. But I do love the color. I don't think I would have bought it but I don't really know what colors I like. I should just buy everything. I'm going to love it when I get it, I'm sure. And I guess these are Connellsville school colors is my guess, but I grew up in State College, Pennsylvania, and these could, be just as well Penn State colors, It's a little bright. Penn State's more navy, I guess, but still. Beautiful yarn. So thank you, Kay, for letting me know how to pronounce that. So look what I'm wearing. Look what I'm wearing. If you watched my first episode, I had talked about what was coming up next, what I was going to knit next. And I just got back from a week's vacation at the Outer Banks of North Carolina. My husband's family, we get a big house on the beach and, 12 bedrooms and this huge, right on the ocean. It was gorgeous. We had a wonderful time, but my plan was to knit this grandpa sweater. Joji Locatelli, super bulky grandpa sweater. And I did it. Let me get up so you can see it. I am so excited about this sweater. It fits me beautifully, and that was a pure accident, unfortunately. But fortunately, a fortunate accident. And I don't have any buttons yet, but it turned out so well. I was trying it on periodically. Well, I could tell you the story. I did a gauge swatch, and the wool I'm using is Rowan Big Silk wool, and the color is called Song. I looked it up because I ended up having to buy another ball of it. But the color, I think, is 712. I'm not sure. But on the website, they call it Song. And so I did a gauge swatch because this yarn has 87 yards per 100 grams, and on the pattern it was the yarn she used was like 78 yards for 100 grams, so my yarn wasn't quite as thick. So I did a gauge swatch, but to tell you the truth, when I do gauge swatches, half the time they're big fat liars and they're not much help. So I did a gauge swatch, and I did all this figuring, and I tried to figure out what size I should make. And of course, by my figuring, I should have made 2 sizes bigger than she even has in her pattern. But I couldn't do that because that would be like crazy. So I made the biggest size because I knew I had more stitches per 4 inches than she was calling for. So I needed a bigger size. And then as I was knitting it, I kept trying it on because it's a raglan top-down sweater. And so I was able to try it on, and I got to the where I split for the sleeves, and I was worried that it was a little bit big because I had originally thought I wasn't going to do the waist shaping because I like a big sweater, but then it felt like maybe it was a little big, so I put the waist shaping in, and it fits me great. I'm so excited about it. I had thought I wanted it a little bit longer, so I ended up playing yarn chicken and lost. So I had to tear out the bottom. I ended up with this much yarn left. I probably could have done a stretchier bind off because I did have a little bit of yarn left. But the other thing is that this sweater, you can't really see it on this picture, but the sweater has a pocket. And I really wanted a pocket. I really like a pocket. There's a picture. I really like a pocket. She only has one on here. You can see her hands in the pocket. And I thought if I had enough yarn, I would make 2 pockets. I didn't have enough yarn for even 1 pocket. I did when I was making it. I had 3 balls of yarn left, and so I decided I better put the sleeves in before I do anything else. I don't want to end up with a 3/4 sleeve because this is a very heavy. This is going to be keeping me warm. It's not going to be a light spring 3/4 sleeve, so I needed long sleeves. So I did that, and so each sleeve took only 1 ball, so I had 1 ball left, and I just made it as long as I could. So I've just ordered another ball, and if I can get 2 pockets out of it, I should be able to get 2 pockets out of it. And I'm going to put 2 pockets in because I really like a pocket. I think you need a pocket. So anyway, I can wear this. I just need to get buttons, but I am so excited. This is my first cardigan that I've ever done. I've only done a few sweaters. They've all been top-down raglan sweaters, as was this. But it's a cardigan, which I had never done before. And I've never used this big, bulky yarn before. And I never used I don't see them. I thought I had them handy. And I never used those big honking needles before. Oh my gosh, this was done in a size 15 needle, 10 millimeters. And I did find that after a while my hands got tired. And I could switch and knit on socks and things, and my hands felt better. So it was the big needles that, ended. But I was knitting a lot. I've started this sweater last Sunday. Today is Sunday, September 25th, 2016, by the way. So I started last Sunday, and I finished it on Friday. So I spent the whole week working on this sweater. It became kind of a little bit of the joke at the house. Are you done with that yet? Yeah, well, finally I said, yes, I am. So anyway, I'm so excited about this sweater. It fits me great. It feels wonderful. It's going to be very warm, but I get cold. So I'm happy that it's warm. So I love this sweater. Super bulky grandpa sweater by Joji Locatelli. Really, really nice. Another thing that I finished was my socks that you saw in episode 1. I finished these. These are just a basic pattern. I did a spiral. I did a 63 stitch count and just knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, purl 1, and it ends up creating a spiral, which you can't really see very well. But it makes for a very squishy sock, and I love it. So I finished these, and it's autumn now, and it's actually cool, and I can wear them now because it's cool enough to wear. So this yarn was, and I know to remember on my first episode, I don't think I showed a single ball of yarn that I was using. So this is what's left over. So I have lots left over. I'm going to be making some kind of scrappy something. Mary Beth and Helen on the Crafty Toads, I love their podcast. I mentioned that last time. They're doing what they call the Mrs. Weasley sweater. So instead of doing a scrappy blanket, they're doing a cardigan, a fingering weight cardigan, where they're doing like 6 rows of a color and then picking another color and picking another color. And when I met them at the New Jersey Sheep and Wool Show a couple of weeks ago, I got to see Helen's. It was gorgeous. It's very inspiring. I might think about that. I do have a Cozy Memories blanket started, but I only have about 9 squares on it. And I haven't been doing anything. And I've been collecting a lot of scraps. But this is the Knitting Goddess. And Blue-Faced Leicester, other British wool, and nylon in the Berry Swirl colorway. Really pretty. And it's going to be very good wearing socks that I made. So I'm really happy with those. And I'm looking forward to wearing them later today because it's chilly. I'm so glad. So I have one more finished object. As I mentioned last episode, I am a member of the Shawl Society, Curious Handmade. Helen Stewart has the Shawl Society, and every month for 6 months you get a new shawl pattern. And the first one was in June. the Talisman shawl, and I loved that shawl. And I made it so fast that I did the small size in a beautiful yarn, Orange Flower Yarns, and I did it so fast that my finished object was the first finished object in the finished object thread for Curious Handmade for the Talisman shawl. That's how fast I did it. In fact, that month I did a second one that I gave my daughter-in-law for her baby shower for my second granddaughter, who came in August. And I really like that. And last podcast I showed you my finished amulet shawl, which I also loved, and that was the July pattern. I was away in August, so by the time I saw the next pattern, it was the end of the month, and I didn't really have a chance to do it yet, but I really liked it. It's a lace weight pattern, and it uses beads, which I've never knit with beads, and it's a beautiful pattern, and I intend to sometime make that pattern. But by the time I saw the pattern and had it in my hand, Helen was already giving hints about the September shawl. And it was a DK weight shawl that was using 3 colors of DK. Now, I mentioned in my previous episode, I like to buy yarn as souvenirs when I travel. And my husband and I have been doing a lot of traveling since we retired. We're very lucky people. And last summer, we were in Peru. And while I was in Peru, I bought a gajillion balls of alpaca, DK weight alpaca. I got, I don't know, 6 colors, 10 balls each. I mean, it was just a crazy amount. I could do 3 Afghans, I'm sure. And I bought all colors that could be natural colors of an alpaca. They're not. I'm sure they're dyed. In fact, I know they're dyed. But they were, beige, kind of light brown, dark gray, light gray, cream colored. I did get 1 set of maroon, so I have other burgundy, so I do have 1 other color. But anyway, I had this beautiful alpaca that I hadn't done anything with. I tried to make a hat out of it. Alpaca is not a good yarn for hats, and I know that, but I tried. It didn't work. So anyway, I have all this beautiful alpaca, so I was very excited to, in anticipation of this new shawl, which she's called the Quill Shawl. And so I was waiting for that to come out. So when it came out, I was not in love with the shawl. And I was, it's not fair to expect that you're going to love every shawl in a 6 shawl collection. I mean, my intellectual brain knows that. But I was disappointed because I was so excited about this shawl, to use this yarn and have a squishy, really warm alpaca shawl. And so I was kind of disappointed, to tell you the truth. And so that's when I cast on the Deco City shawl that I showed you in my first episode, and I'll show you a little later. I did work on it with my hand spun. And, so I did that instead, and which I loved, and I really enjoyed knitting it. I really liked it. But I was a little disappointed to not be using my alpaca. And then, after I started that shawl, I follow Tink Hickman on Instagram, and she occasionally does sample knitting for Helen Stewart. And she posted a picture of her version of the Quill Shawl. And I loved it. I have no idea what it was about Helen's sample of that shawl that didn't strike me. I'm not sure what it was. I know that I have trouble picturing things sometimes. It makes it hard to pick yarn. Since I'm having trouble picturing what something's going to look like. And I rarely buy yarn for a specific project. Usually, I have a ton of yarn back here, so I'm often looking at yarn and saying, okay, what can I make out of this beautiful yarn I have? And I sometimes have trouble picturing. Well, there's something about Helen's version of her shawl that just didn't resonate with me, and I don't know why. But Deb, who is Tink Hickman. I don't know her, but, you know, Danny of Little Bobbins knows her. And her name is Deb, apparently. I loved her version of the shawl. And the only thing I could identify that was different, significantly different, was that the third color, which was the contrast color in Tink Hickman's shawl, was the light color, and Helen's was more of the brighter color. I don't know. Anyway, I loved her shawl. And I was so happy to love that shawl because I wanted that shawl. And so I have cast on and cast off the quill shawl since my last episode. And it is a big, gorgeous, yummy, squishy alpaca shawl. I keep getting up, but I think that'll work better. You'll be able to see it better. It is so amazing. I am so happy with this. I don't know if you can hear me talking from back here, but oh my gosh. Now, I don't think it's going to be the kind of shawl that I wear like this, because it's so big, you know, but it's going to be the kind of shawl that I wear like this. And I just wrap up in. And I am going to be so warm, although now that I've made it, I might end up giving it away because it's so beautiful. It would be a lovely gift. But I will make another one. I just sat down and knit this in like 3 or 4 days. I started it thinking, oh, well, you know, it'll be something I can knit when I'm at the beach. If I'm sitting and talking, you know, because it's a lot of garter stitch, so you can, stockinette, so you can sit and talk and without too much trouble. But I just couldn't put it down, and I ended up knitting the whole thing. I mean, but I did take it with me to finish it at the beach. I had like 5 rolls. I had 5 rows left, and so I finished it at the beach. But I love this shawl. I love this shawl. I'm so excited. So this yarn that I got in Peru is called Indicita DK. And I used 3 colors, 401, I have them here, 401, 404, and 100. And when I got this yarn, I have so much of it. I went crazy. But when I put it in Ravelry, I found about a dozen other people who had stashed this same yarn, and every single one noted that it had been bought at the Indian market in Lima. So it's very possible that's the only place you can get this yarn. I have no idea. But it is squishy and gorgeous, and I am so happy with this. I don't remember what I used, the needle size that was recommended, so let me just look it up and I can tell you what it is. I love Helen Stewart patterns because she puts line by line, she tells you what the total stitches are, and so it's very easy to tell if you are on track or not. US 8, 5mm US 8, so I'm sure that's what I used. Anyway, I was so happy to like this shawl because I really wanted to make this out of this alpaca, and oh my gosh, it's so wonderful. So I may have to make another one. I have plenty to do that with. But it's very strange, but I think it was the lighter color, apparently the lighter color as the lacy part is what struck me. I don't know why. Very strange. I am in love with this shawl, so I was very happy to be in love with this shawl. I really wanted to like it. So now I'm looking forward to the next one, and we'll be out for a couple weeks. So those are the things I finished. Well, this sweater isn't technically finished because I really do want to have pockets. And I don't have buttons, but I'm going to buy buttons in the next day or 2 and put them on and wear this sweater. Well, I'm going to wear it today anyway because it's nice and cool. I'm going to go sit out on my deck where it's cool. with my new sweater. I'm very excited, as you can tell. So I do have a couple things on the needles. This is my Deco City shawl that I just mentioned that I cast on when I was a little disappointed about Helen's shawl. The interesting thing about this is it uses exactly the same stitch pattern for its kind of lacy part as Helen's does. Can you see that? With the bigger yarn and the bigger needle, the holes are bigger, but it's basically the same pattern, which I thought was pretty interesting. But this is an Art Deco shawl. I'm making this out of my hand spun. I'm gonna see my little progress keeper. That's where I was. That's where I was last time. So I've done a few inches. This is the hippopotamus that I showed you last week. So cute. But this is my hand spun. The fiber was from Seven Sisters fiber, Seven Sisters yarn, Seven Sisters. It's got camel and silk and merino. That's not showing quite the right colors, but it's kind of a peachy. It's not. It is. The colors are a little striped, but it's showing up much stripier on the screen than it reads in person. I mean, it's obvious that there's lots of different colors in it in person, but not quite so much as that. And I am knitting this on these look like highs. I'm not sure. I'll figure that out. But this is from the Pom Pom magazine, volume 15, and it's called the Deco City Shawl, and it's by Amy Vanderlaar. I really love this volume of this magazine. It's got so many things in it. So that's one work in progress. And because I finished my socks, I have another pair of socks on the go. And after I started these, I thought, how funny. I picked this color. It's so springy. But I picked this yarn for a couple of reasons. One, it's a BFL yarn, which I had never used before in socks, and I had it, and I thought I would try it. And the other is it's Zena's yarn, Little Yellow Uke Crafts. She started dyeing yarn. I love her podcast, if you haven't seen it. She's a charming, lovely woman. And she does beautiful, beautiful knitting. She's also sews and does some other things. But this is her Soprano BFL, 75% BFL, 25% nylon, and the color is New Blooms. And I thought it was kind of funny that I picked this sort of springy color to do next, but I did. And I knit mine, as you can see, 2 at a time. And so I weigh a ball and split it up, and you can see that one of my socks has a lot more of the darker pink than the other, which I don't mind, but I thought it was kind of interesting. And this sock pattern is the Petunia Dursley Double Eyelet Socks. I thought it was such a sweet color that it seemed like it needed a little bit of an eyelet. So I think, and this is by Erica Lauder. She's the one who does Hermione's Everyday Socks. And it's also a free pattern. I'm pretty sure it's a free pattern, but it's very sweet. And it's just got a little bit of an eyelet going on, and I thought this yarn needed a little bit of an eyelet. But the yardage on this yarn is 425 meters for 100 grams. And so I don't know if that influenced me or if it really seemed like lighter fingering than regular. So what I did is I went down a needle size. So I'm doing this on size 0s, Addy Rockets. I usually use a US one, which is 2.25. These are 2.0, I think, and millimeters. And the pattern is a 10-stitch pattern, so I went up from 64, which is my normal stitch count, to 70. So it's because the pattern calls for 60, which is never going to work for me. 64 is a bit of a stretch, literally, but I like my socks snug. So I went up to 70 and I went down a needle size, and I'm liking the fabric, and I think it's going to work out just fine. But and this is I put this progress keeper in because we drove home from the Outer Banks yesterday, and using a size 0 needle and thin yarn, I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I mean, feel like I've been working on these socks for quite a while, because I finished the other socks within a few days of my first podcast, which was 2 weeks ago. And so I put this progress keeper in when I started knitting in the car yesterday, because I just wanted to make sure I was actually getting somewhere. And this is a sweet little progress keeper that I got with the yarn from Zena, and it says made with love. I don't think you can actually read that, but it's just a sweet little progress keeper. So that was nice. And I have this in my little bobbins bag, my little rabbit. So I'm enjoying knitting those, but I did kind of chuckle at myself. It's like I'm so excited that it's autumn and I'm going to be able to wear socks, and then I'm like making my Easter socks. Not that I make Easter socks, but it just, I mean, it's called New Blooms, and it's really, really kind of a sweet color. So those are the two things that I have on the go right this minute. But I have some other things I'm going to have to be making. I'm going to turn the page of my notes because I made notes. So one of the things is I do need to start working on my Christmas presents, because I knit for my kids. I have 2 children and a daughter-in-law and a significant other. And I have 2 granddaughters, a brand new granddaughter. She's only 6 weeks old. And I'm a 3-year-old granddaughter. And so I do have holiday knitting. Besides Christmas presents, which I knit, I have 3 birthdays between now and the end of the year. So I have present knitting to do in the next few months. And I'm going to start doing that. And as it turns out, Zena of Little Yellow Uke has a cal going on. She's calling it the Be Prepared Cal. So, and I think it's maybe September and October, to try to encourage people to do their holiday knitting or their gift knitting early, so they're not knitting at the last minute. And so I think hers runs to the end of October, but you should check it out on her podcast and her thread. It's called the Be Prepared Cal. And then I watched the Grocery Girls yesterday, and it turns out they're having a cal. They're calling it the Knitworthy Cal. So if you're making gifts for people who are knitworthy, they're doing a cal for that. So so I've got to start working on my presents, because I don't want to be knitting at the last minute. My last Christmas present got finished at the end of January last year, which I didn't like. And so I want to make sure that I have my holiday knitting done and my gift knitting done. And I might as well do it now and get to participate in a couple of cals. Why not? So I'm planning on doing that. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was, in my first podcast, I had one of the things that I had recently purchased was this book by Amy Herzog, You Can Knit That. And I had just been flipping through it, and I hadn't read it at the time. And I said, I'll review this book. Like, I mean, you don't know me. You don't know what kind of knitter I am. I'm, new at this, and I've only been knitting for 4 years. But anyway, so whether or not you are interested in my opinion of this book, I don't know. But I decided to review it, and I'm really glad I did, because it made me kind of go through the book more carefully than I have. I haven't always gone through so carefully my other books. I buy them, and I flip through them, and then they go on my bookshelf because I'm a bit of a collector. I'm a bit of a collector, I will tell you, and I do like a nice book. So anyway, I said that I would review this. So I actually, took a pretty good look at it, and I found quite a few sweaters in here that I really like. But it starts out with 3 sections, one called Before You Knit, the other one called During the Knitting, and then After the Knitting. And the Before the Knitting section, I read pretty carefully after I started the sweater, of course, like that's going to do me any good. But anyway, she talks about swatching, obviously, because swatching is very important, and not everybody's swatches are as big fat liars like my swatches. And I'm thinking if I do swatching the way she suggests, then maybe my swatches will be more useful to me and actually help in my knitting, which is what they're really supposed to do. And I guess I don't want to like give away her secrets or anything, but she does swatching a little bit backwards from the way I've been doing it and the way people talk about doing it. Because the way I've been doing it is I do a swatch and then I measure the 4 inches and, and then see how many stitches I have in that 4 inches. And what she says is to mark off the number of stitches in the pattern gauge. At least I think that's what she says. I could be completely misinterpreting it. But mark off the number, like for the sweater, the Joji sweater that I just did, the Super Bulky Grandpa sweater, the gauge was 7 stitches to 4 inches. And I got over 9.5 or whatever. So what Amy Herzog is saying is you should mark off the 7 stitches that, and then measure that and see how big that is, as opposed to trying to calculate, 9.25 stitches in 4 inches. You basically say, okay, how many inches is the 7 stitches that you're supposed to be getting in 4 inches? How many is it really? And then calculating from there, which I thought was interesting. And I'm going to try that next time. And maybe my gauge swatch will be a little more useful. So anyway, and then for during the knitting, she talks about, trying things on and thinking about edge shaping and ease and other things like that. And then after the knitting, she talks about how to put things together and block your sweaters and how to take care of them, which I thought was, helpful. And she has little mini exercises at the end of each of these sections, which I'll confess, I didn't even read because I'm not going to do mini exercises. But if you're a mini exercise kind of person, she has them. But then she has, I'm not sure how many sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 sections of 6 different kinds of sweaters. And the first one is vests, which I confess, I'm not that interested in vests. But she has some beautiful vests. But the other thing that's fun about this book is that at the beginning of every section, and there are 7 sections of 7 different types of sweaters, she starts with a child's version. And her contention is that it's easier to practice something on a smaller version, which I think is brilliant. So that was the little kids, and then she has a bunch of vests and I mean, this is a very classic. She's got lots of beautiful classic kind of styles here, and they're nice. And they like the finished measurement of that vest goes from 30 inches to 54.5 inches, and that vest is intended to be worn with 1 to 2 inches of ease. So she starts with vests, which I probably won't be making vests. But then she has what she calls integrated sleeves. And basically they're sweaters that you knit the sleeve while you're knitting the sweater. And some of them are knit cuff to cuff, and some of them are knit I'm not sure. But then she starts with the kids' version of an easygoing sweatshirt, which was very cute. And some other nice sweaters. This is kind of a pretty cardigan. Easy, called the Blaze cardigan. And then next section is drop shoulders. And she has some pretty, and this was my favorite of the kids' sweaters. This is the kids' sweater and the drop shoulder. Really cute. But I am a selfish Nana, and I am not making that sweater for my granddaughter. And I'll tell you why in a minute. I like this one. This is a very classic sweater. And let me see. Lots of different pictures. I'm not showing you all the pictures. The next one is raglan. And I have made raglan sweaters before. In fact, all the sweaters I have made are raglan. But, you know, I mean, really wardrobe classics. That you could just make yourself a t-shirt. It would be perfect. And, you know, raglan's easy. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Just kidding. And then she has one called Yokes. And this is where the color work comes in on this one, which is beautiful. I have never done color work. So, and I've never done sort of a yoke sweater. So, but this sweater called the Maypole, I just love that. I might try that. So that's cables. And they get, you know, small around the neck and they get bigger as you go down the yoke. Beautiful. So I might try that one just because, you know, you want to try something new. But my favorite one is this sweater. This is in the set-in sleeve section. And I love that sweater. I'll show you another picture of it. So, being the selfish Nana I am, I've decided I'm going to make my granddaughter this sweater, which is called the Birdie Cardi Mini, which is a lovely sweater. And I think it'll be good to have a V-neck on Isabel because I think, you know, there's too much around her neck sometimes. And so I think this is on my next thing I'm going to start working on is this Birdie Cardi so I can practice before I make this for myself, which I love. It's called the Downy cardigan. And I need cardigans, so that's, you know, and I just love this. But this sweater, the sample is made out of Blue Sky Alpaca's Techno yarn, which I actually have. I now have one skein of it. I had two. I made a hat out of it. I didn't end up loving the hat. I loved the yarn, but I didn't love the hat. My mother-in-law did, so she got the hat. But this is fancy, yummy, amazing yarn. 68% baby alpaca, 22% silk, and 10% extra fine merino. And it's kind of, I don't know how it's made, but it ends up being like a tube. The yarn is like a tube. And it is yummy, wonderful yarn. But for my size, I need 11 skeins of this yarn. And it's $23 a skein. I'm like, oh my gosh. That's a lot of money. And, you know, I'm trying to make an everyday sweater because I want to wear them. And I don't think if I spent, which I'm not going to, but even if I did spend $230 on the yarn to make a sweater, I'm not wearing that every day. So I tell you what I did. I went out on Webs, yarn.com, because I had to buy another skein for my pockets. And they had discontinued colors for half price. So I was thinking this morning I might have made a mistake, but I ended up ordering the yellow. And it's a beautiful yellow, and it's very possible that I might actually like it as yellow. And I might make myself a yellow, yummy, gorgeous yellow sweater that I might wear since it's not $230. But this morning I was thinking, they also had a pink, which I don't think I would make it pink. But I was thinking, you know, I have this idea. I want to start dyeing yarn. And I thought, oh, I could over dye this yarn. And it occurred to me this morning that it might be easier to over dye the pink into something I like than the yellow. But since I don't know enough about any of it, I'm not sure. I'm actually taking a dyeing class, a 3-hour dyeing class from Neighborhood Fiber Company in Baltimore, which is a couple hours south from me, in November. And they say, you know, bring yarn if you want to over dye it. I don't think they mean bring 12 skeins. But I might bring it anyway, just in case I can get some ideas about how to over dye it. Because, who knows? I may love the yellow when I get it because it's bright. It'll go with my hair. And, you know, and it's really, really yummy yarn. But it's still a $100 sweater. So I don't want to mess it up. So we'll see. But I did buy this yarn yesterday because I love this sweater. So anyway, and there's another sweater I love in this book. This one I can't see very well, but it has cables down the middle of the front, and it's a very classic. And all these, all the sizes are like from, this one is 29.5 to 53.5, and it's intended to be worn with 2 inches of ease. So, I don't know if that's a wide enough range. The Downy cardigan that I love is from 33.5 to 56.5, but it's supposed to be worn with 3 to 4 inches of ease at the bust when it's buttoned. So, but they do have schematics of, can't see that very well. I'm not doing so good with my lighting here. About how they go together and how big each one should be. They do have charts for the things that seem like they need charts, although this doesn't have it. No, it does. The this sweater that I really liked with the cables, it does have a chart to show you how to do the cables. I like charts. So I'm glad to have a chart when it looks like it should be charted. So I really like this book, and it is super loaded with classic patterns. The really straightforward classic patterns. Some of them, I mean, you know, the color work one, the one with, I mean, they're not all boring. They're not boring at all. In fact, there are half a dozen sweaters in this book that I would like to make and own and wear. So, more than half a dozen. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 tags. Oh, but one of them's for my granddaughter. So half a dozen. There are 24 sweaters in here. And at least a half a dozen I would make in a heartbeat. And I would wear. And you know, I'm kind of thinking about that vest now that I say that. I don't know why I don't want a vest. It's a cute vest. It's very straightforward. A lot of nice little cardigans. Anyway, I am very happy that I bought this book. I bought the book. It wasn't, you know, nobody asked me to review this, and maybe nobody cares about my review. But there are a bunch of cute sweaters, and there's another. If this went to 3 months, I would do that other sweet little sweater for my brand new granddaughter. But it starts at size 1. The kids' sweaters start at size 1. And go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10. So, and I guess 10-year-old, after a size 10, you're probably in an extra small adult size, I suspect. So, anyway, I'm really happy I bought this book. And I really, and I intend to make, I'm going to make that sweater, that Selfish Nana sweater, for my Isabel, because she wants her sweater. She already approved the yarn. She didn't approve the sweater, but I think she'll like it. And that's the one I'm going to make. And I'm going to make it out of, I hope I have enough yarn for it. I'm making it out of Simplicity by Haiku. This is 55% merino superwash, 28% acrylic, and 17% nylon. It's a beautiful squishy yarn, and it is machine dryable. My kids do not have time to worry about taking super care of Nana's knitting. So anyway, this is a lovely yarn. It will make a beautiful red sweater for my granddaughter who loves red. And I will practice a set-in sleeve, which I've never done. I've only done the raglans. And so this is one of my gifts that I'm going to be making for the Knitworthy Cow by the Grocery Girls and the Be Prepared Cow by Zena of Little Yellow Uke. So, and that's going to be, it's called the Birdie Party Mini. And I'm going to start working on that because it's gotten a little cold here and she's going to need her sweater. And she wants her red sweater. So I just, as I said, went to the Outer Banks with my in-laws for a week. And in my last podcast, I said that I was going to wait and tell you why I started knitting for this podcast because it was more appropriate. And the reason it's more appropriate is the reason I started knitting happened in the Outer Banks 5 years ago, I think, when we were there. We've been doing this for 8 years, and I think 5 years ago. My sister-in-law, Kim, and I both make jewelry, and she suggested, because we were going to the bead shops and doing stuff, you know, thinking about jewelry, making jewelry while we were down there, and she suggested that we go into this yarn shop in case they had any cool yarn that we could incorporate into our jewelry. And so I walked in there. The yarn shop on the in the Outer Banks is called Knitting Addiction. Since then they've moved and now they're in Kitty Hawk, I think. And we were in this beautiful yarn shop, and I was just walking around getting high on yarn fumes, and I wasn't even, you know, I'd never been in a yarn shop before, and I was walking around this yarn shop just touching everything and oohing and awing. And I ended up buying some novelty yarn, which is back there. And I used a little bit of it to make some jewelry, but I still have most of what I bought. And I'll probably have it, you know, when I die. But I walked out of that store saying, I wish I knew how to knit because I want to own this yarn. So, and I just couldn't get that thought out of my head. I just loved that yarn and made me start thinking about, well, if I wish I could knit, then do I really wish I could knit? Or, you know, and I realized that I really was interested in learning how to knit. And so I taught myself, you know, I watched YouTube. You can learn anything on YouTube. It's crazy. And I taught myself how to knit. And like I said last time, I started knitting about 3 days before I found out I was going to be a grandmother for the first time. And so that was it. So every year now, needless to say, when we go to the Outer Banks, I go to Knitting Addiction. It's like coming home, you know. It's almost like it's my local yarn shop. Well, when I started knitting, I didn't have any local yarn shops, and so it was almost like a local yarn shop for me because I went once a year. And I absolutely do not need yarn. I mean, let's face it, but when you're at your local yarn shop, you have to buy some yarn. So I did. I bought this beautiful yarn. It's from Shalimar Yarns, and the colorway is Bungalow. And it is 75% superwash merino, 15% cashmere and 10% silk for 120 yards. I am in love with this. It feels so wonderful, and it's blues, and I guess I'm into blues these days. A little bit of gray. This is looking more blue and not quite as gray. It's a little brighter on the screen than it is in person. A little bit of taupe. Just gorgeous. Oh, I am definitely into cashmere content of yarn lately. Because this is so gorgeous. And she sells cute baskets. So I bought a little basket. This is going to work like a yarn bowl. Cute little basket. So those are the things I got at Knitting Addiction. She sells a lot of cotton yarn, which makes sense. I mean, she's down at the beach in North Carolina. And, you know, I mean, if most of her clientele are summer visitors, cotton and linen, she's got a lot of beautiful cotton stuff. But, you know, I'm not that interested in knitting with cotton. But I also have some goodies that I got in the mail. I got this from the Cozy Knitter. I should have taken it out of the bag. I'm sorry. I noted that's Christina. She's half of the Die Another Day podcast, and she had said on her podcast at one time, I'm pretty sure, I thought I heard, that she would be happy to split her, because she makes self-striping yarn, and as a two-at-a-time knitter, self-striping can, you know, trying to figure out how to make 2 balls of somebody else's self-striping yarn can be a little tricky. Bliss is the base, and the color is New Horizons, I think. So anyway, I sent her a message on Etsy and asked her would she be able to ball it up for me, because I'm a two-at-a-time knitter, and she did. Isn't that sweet? So I've got 2 balls here plus the contrasting heel and toes, and that'll be fun. I don't have a lot of self-striping yarn. I'm not as in love with striped socks as some people, but I like them. And and so I was interested in trying this. This is 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and 420 yards altogether. So anyway, beautiful colors. I'm so excited. I don't know what this is going to, but it's got pink and yellow and purple and orange and blue. And I think it's going to make some very fun socks, so I'm excited about that. And then I follow the Wool Barn on Instagram. I saw there was an update. Maya of the Wool Barn. I talk about her like I know her, but, you know, Danny of Little Bobbins knows her, and that's why I think I know her. But I have gotten yarn from her before. My Christmas sock yarn last year was an MCN that made the most beautiful socks. So this is her Silky Singles. This is 70% superwash merino, 30% silk, single ply, and the color is called Light Mauve. It's just But, you know, when you're getting yarn shipped from the UK to Pennsylvania, I'm in Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania, you might as well go for it, right? So this is alpaca sock. This is 70% baby alpaca, 20% silk, and 10% cashmere. The colorway is called Silver. This is not going to be socks. This is not in any way going to be socks. But one thing about my stash is I have a lot of variegated yarns and things, and I, you know, need some more tonals and contrasting or, you know, complementary colors. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Because then I got this. I'm very drawn to this color. It's showing a little lighter than it actually is. It's more of a beigey color than it's kind of showing. It's called Nectar. And this is 70% BFL, 20% silk, 10% cashmere. And this is a squishy, squishy, squishy yarn. This is called her Lustrous Sock Base. Not going to be socks. I don't think this is going to be socks either. But, oh, beautiful. So these are my Wool Barn yarns that I got. That will go with other yarns I have in my stash to make some beautiful shawls, I'm sure. So that's it. That's all I have. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching my podcast, and it was so thrilling to have people subscribe. And I got such nice feedback. I tried to take some of the feedback into account in terms of trying to improve the podcast. I'm very happy to hear any suggestions you have that will make the podcast more enjoyable for you. And thank you so much for watching. It's my intention to podcast every 2 weeks, so I'll see you in about 2 weeks. And thank you so much for joining me. And happy knitting. Happy knitting.